Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of our Inventor Introduction series. My name is Cameron McKenzie, and today we're going to be looking at the integration of Vault inside of our Inventor workspace and how we can make use of Vault as a process of managing our data during our product management process, really. So for those of you that might not be familiar with Vault, Vault is a data management product that is provided by Autodesk. We will go through some of the products that include a benefit of Vault. In other words, certain products that you may have purchased inside of the Autodesk family are entitled to or have the benefit of using the license of Vault Basic. And today we're going to have a look at some of the features of Vault Basic as a whole. So from the onset, Vault Basic is essentially a product management software, or essentially a data management software, where we can come in and rather than saving our files from inside of Inventor into our local database, we can essentially store this onto a server. And therefore, it's user-based control. So we essentially, as an individual user, will need to check a file in or out. And therefore, every time we check a file in and out, it creates a version of the file. So we've got a history of the different versions of our files. And also that then begins to ensure that we don't have replication of files pushed everywhere else within the company. We've got one source of truth now within a Vault system for the latest version of the file, that anybody who has access to Vault has access to be able to visualize and see and be able to access as well. So they've got the ability to check a file out in their name and be able to make work on that, while other people won't be able to then be able to work on that. It becomes a read-only version of the file, and therefore other users won't be able to make changes while I'm still editing a file. As soon as I'm happy with the file and I've made the changes I need, I check it back into Vault, and anybody can then access the data once more, as long as they have access to Vault, as long as they've got a license and a user account associated to that. So just to get onto the point of the benefits that we have, or the Autodesk benefits. If I go into the other slide here very quickly, I promise I won't bore everybody with too many slideshows. It's just really one slide that we'll show in here. So these are the Autodesk products that include the Vault Basic benefit. You can have a look. At the moment, this is today, the 25th of October 2022, and this has pretty much been the case for many years now, but I would implore you, if you are watching this later on, just have a look on the website. I've got the link down below, as well as the QR code if you wanted to scan the QR code or just copy the link from directly inside there. We'll also put this in the description down below as well. But essentially, if you want to have a look at the different products that entitle you to a Vault Basic license, these are essentially the products that you can currently have that on. So it's Inventor Professional, which we're going to be using today, 3ds Max, AutoCAD, including specialized tool sets. Just be aware that it's not just AutoCAD, it's AutoCAD, including specialized tool sets. If you've got the Product Design Manufacturing Collection, the AEC Collection, Architecture, Engineering, Construction Collection, as well as the Media and Entertainment Collection. You'll see within your product list, you've got access to a Vault Basic download. So every Vault Basic configuration will need to have a server that stores all of the data on. So you will need to install a Vault server, which is essentially the main Vault installation. And then every single user that has a license of one of these products will then be entitled to install the Vault client, which then integrates your software into the Vault database onto the server itself. So we're working locally on our machine, and the data that we're working with then synchronizes to a server. That server can be any computer on your network. So in my configuration, apologies, I bumped the mic. In my current configuration, I have my server saved onto my machine. So I'm working locally, but in a lot of instances, you'll be working inside of a network within an office, and essentially checking files in and out onto a server that's somewhere within the same network. whether you VPN'd onto the network or whether you're working locally, we've got the ability to have a single data source that everybody is communicating back and forward with. I hope that's a good explanation. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact us. But yeah, today we're just going to be having a look at the workflow behind each of these. So we've gone through previously the workflow of creating our components, sharing them. Again, apologies for the mic. Let me just move it out of my handway. And essentially, yeah, just going through the workflow of how do we integrate this, how do we integrate our data into Vault, and some of the benefits and some of the uses we've got inside of Vault as a whole. And that's essentially what we're going to be going over today. So without any further ado, I told you there's 2 slides. So slides are all done for today. We'll get straight into the product. So the first one we're going to have a look at is back inside of our Inventor environment. So as you can see, standard Inventor environment that we've been used to up until now. What you will notice is inside of our ribbon, we have, if you have Vault installed, we've now got a Vault tab available to us. We've got all of our options for creating files or saving files and checking them in and out and all of that inside of Vault. We've also got a Vault tab available to us in our browser. If you don't have that there and you do have Vault installed, you can just hit the little plus icon and it should become available to the side, on the side over there. It's currently got a little exclamation mark because I haven't signed into Vault yet. So every Vault user will need to have an account, which just makes sure that there is some a bit of a paper trail as to who has opened a file, when they've opened the file, when they've made any changes, and so on. So every user who accesses Vault will need to have a Vault account, and that can be configured by your administrator. So if I log in here very quickly inside of Inventor, in my Vault tab, I've got a login option, and I'll just log in currently as the administrator. But again, every user will have their own account associated to this. So we've got different authentication types. We've got Vault account, Windows account, Autodesk ID, and Content Center files, read-only user, essentially. I am using Vault Professional for this demonstration, but the features that I will be showing you are specific to Vault Basic. The next tier up is Vault Professional, which gives you a bit more functionality. And if we have time towards the end, I'll show you some of that functionality as well. So again, we get a username, we get a password just to make sure that there's some security to this. And then we need to choose the server that we're going to be connecting to. In this case, it's my local machine, so I'm just using localhost. And then I've got a single vault called my gold vault, because that's where all the data is stored, and that's where all the golden nuggets are stored, or saved rather. So essentially, we're logging into our local machine, into the vault called Gold Vault. I'm just going to hit OK on there, and it'll sign me into this now. Might take a few seconds. It does take a little longer on the first run of the day, and this is my first run of my day. A bit brave on that one, I suppose, but anyway, we'll go forward with it. Cool. So essentially, once we've got this in, so this is a file that I've just created. This hinge over here, I've got 2 versions of it. If I go back to the model space, I've got the right hinge and I've got the left hinge in the same part that I've created. Oh, that one's missing a hole, but anyway. If I go over to my hinge assembly, I've taken 2 of those hinges, put them together. I've got a left and a right, and got a pin going right through the middle. So very simple setup in this one, but this can handle assemblies as big as you want to, really, that you can manage inside of Inventor as well, or any of the other products, really, as you saw earlier in the presentation. And essentially from here, it's just a case of going over, once I've created my file, checking it into Vault for the first time. It's just a case of going over to my Vault tab or my Vault tab in the browser, whether it be the ribbon or the browser. And I've got the ability to come in and check this in. So as soon as I hit check in over here, let me just bring this over to the correct screen. It's going to ask me to save the assembly before I check it in. Now this is going to save it locally first. I'm going to say, yes, I want to save this locally. It's then going to create the file if it needs to be created and save it locally for me. I'll just hit yes to all to save that and hit OK on there. And then it comes up with the other window. Apologies, let me grab it here. And when we're checking a file in, we've got a few options. So first option we've got is to keep the files checked out. So if we're wanting to save the file for the first time and just make sure that the file exists inside of Vault, so other users can then see it and place it into their assemblies or however they're working with it, we've got the ability to keep files checked out. If I don't want to keep the files checked out, I'm finished with this design for now. I'll come and check it out back in my name later on. I've got the ability to leave that unticked. I can also close files and delete working copies. So as I said earlier, this is going to save my file now locally. Because Inventor wants to work locally, that's the way Inventor likes to work. If I was finished with this file and didn't want to work on it anymore, I can say that I want to close the file and delete any working copies, and that'll delete any local working copies and ensure that the latest version of my file is the only one that, or the only one that I can access at least, is the one that's on the server. Anytime I need to grab the latest version, I'm grabbing it from the server rather than opening it up locally. Say that the one that I have local is out of date. I created it 4 or 5 months ago, and there've been 20 changes to it. If I open the one that's local, it's not the latest version. I want to grab the latest version from Vault. We can always get the latest version, which I'll show you through in a few seconds. But generally, best practice, if you're not going to be working on the file and want to make sure that you are always working with the latest one, this is a really handy tick box to have here. It just closes any files you have open and checks them all into Vault, and then deletes any local copies of it. So it forces you to always get the latest version, and therefore you're never working on older data. What you might also notice is, because I've grabbed the assembly, what it's doing at the same time is it's grabbing not only the assembly, but it's also checking the 2 children parts, or the child parts, into the database at the same time. So we're taking our hinge assembly, we're also grabbing the hinge, and we're grabbing the pin, and we're checking those into Vault. We can change that if we wanted to. If we wanted to just ensure that we weren't, grab it from here. If we go into our settings over here, we can say that we want to include or exclude children. We can also, if we were checking in from the part level, we could say we want to include all parents. So Vault will see the assembly as the parent of a part, or a drawing as the parent of a assembly, or the part that it's related to. And therefore, any children inside of that, it'll include all of them all the way down the line. So we've got the ability to have that option in there, which just helps with the saving process. You don't have to check individual files in all the time. You can actually say in an entire assembly with all of its children, check in. And essentially, yeah, we've got the ability to go and grab a few extra options along the way. But that's probably one of the most important ones along this process. So it is going and grabbing all the children along the way. And if I wanted to, I can come in and add an extra note in here, or an extra comment during this check-in phase. Every check-in or check-out, we've got the ability to add a comment, just adding a bit more information during the life cycle, or during the product's process, during the different versions of our part, just giving some indication as to what has changed during those ones, which might make it easier if we ever need to correct a change that was made earlier. We can go back to a particular version that was made, or that the particular change was made at. So if I just call this one initial save and hit OK on here, this will now go in. So last thing to confirm, it's just confirming at the top over here as well that it's going to be creating this file inside of my gold vault. And what this will also do is it'll show me that the location that it's creating this in. So wherever you've saved this to inside of your local system, it's going to replicate that folder structure inside of Vault as well. So it's going to go into my workspace, projects, Blenheim, and Hinge. If I show you quickly locally before we go through that, this does require the configuration of a project file beforehand. So when you are creating this inside of Inventor, you'll want to create a Vault project file that points to a specific location, again, pointing Vault to look in one subfolder for all of your data. So I've got a gold WF, a gold working folder, and inside of that, I've got a workspace folder, projects, Blenheim, Hinge, and you can see that that then replicates the same folder structure inside of my Vault. So wherever you set the top level of your project, it's going to then replicate that folder structure inside of Vault as you go forward. Again, just makes it easier for finding data. You know that the same folder structure on your local machine in your working folder is going to be the same as the folder structure inside of Vault. So as soon as I hit OK on there, yeah, it says that some of them are not checked out or maybe checked out by other users. They will be deleted. If I continue, I'll just hit yes. There shouldn't be any. They all are new parts. So you can see now it's sending all 3 files to Vault. And now it's going to want to close a few of these. That's fine. It doesn't want to close this one. I'll just close it manually. And you can see that those have now been added in. So now essentially it's just a case of going, if I wanted to, over to Vault. So Vault is a separate program that you can use, and there is obviously the link between the two. So if I just show you the general interface inside of Vault and some of the benefits to working inside of Vault as well, I can just go and grab this over here. And you can see a fairly simple interface that we've got available to us. On the left-hand side, we've got our navigation pane where we can come in and have a look at the entire folder structure over here. And then in the middle, we've got our Explorer pane where we can essentially see all of the files that are located inside of the folder structure. Very similar interface to what you would expect from your Windows Explorer, where you've got the folder structure on the left and you've got all your files in the middle on the right, or in the middle or on the right. Every single folder or file will also have properties associated to it, whether they be Vault properties or whether they be user-defined properties. So we can essentially select any individual file. So say, for example, this drawing 1 that was created a while ago. And as soon as I select it over here, I've got a properties window or properties pane that appears on the left with all of the system properties. It's got a category associated to it if you're working with Vault Professional. It's got file size, file replicated, whether it has a drawing and a whole lot of other properties essentially associated to it. And then there's certain user-defined properties. There's certain properties that we can query for, we can ask Vault to create during the process and look for. And we've got those located a little further down in the properties list as well. Now, if I go into the project or the folder structure that I was saving this previous file into, so it was in the Blenheim Hinge subfolder. If I double click on there one more time, it should open. Another time, not opening today. Hello. Let me just do a refresh quickly, see if that makes any difference. There we go, cool. So now that I've got that one there, you can see I've got my Hinge assembly file, I've got my Hinge part file, and I've got the pin. And each of those are now inside of Vault and in the folder structure. So if I come in and select any one of those, you can see on the side over here, I've got my properties associated to said file. And I can have a look at all of the properties that are related to that. Any event properties that are mapped into Vault will be shown inside there, which will be most of them by default, because obviously Inventor and Vault made by Autodesk, so they've got the ability to communicate very easily between the two. We've also got then the part file, and I can see all of the properties, and the pin file I can see from there. We've also got the information pane at the bottom, or the history pane, and a few other tabs from inside there as well. So selecting any one of these items, whether they be an assembly or whether they be a part file, you'll see I've got an entire history section, which will show me every single version of that file. Every time I check the file out, every time I check the file in, it creates a version of the file. And therefore, I can see who created that version of the file, when it was checked in, any comments. You can see I've got that initial save written over there, and then whether it's checked out or checked out by. And then if you are, again, working with Professional, we've got the ability to add revisions in here. But with Vault Basic, we've got the ability to just work with every single version and make sure that it's then checked out and checked in using those. We've also got the ability to go into the Users tab. So if this file was using any other files or was related to any other files or had any children, they would essentially appear inside here. At the moment, there aren't really any other than the attachment of the DWF, which is essentially the thumbnail of this particular one. So there is a thumbnail associated to it. I can see that in the history. We've got my thumbnail there. But other than that, it doesn't have any children for the pin. However, it is used in another file. So in the where used section, if I expand that out, I can see that the hinge assembly is a parent of this particular file. And if that hinge assembly had a drawing, the drawing would appear as a parent of the hinge assembly. If the pin had a drawing, the drawing would appear as a parent of the pin. So we've got the ability to have a look at all of its parents essentially from there. And the same is true then if I go over to the hinge assembly. It doesn't have any parents, so it doesn't have anything inside of the where used. But if I go into the users tab, I can see that it uses the hinge and it also uses the pin. So the hinge and the pin are children of the assembly. And we can see that relationship inside of Vault. So not only do we see it inside of Inventor, but Inventor is able to relay that into Vault. And we can see any of those as they're connected through. One of the other benefits to this now is if you were using a single part files from elsewhere inside of your Vault system. Say, for example, I was using a part file from this tame key holder folder over here. I could come in, and if they were a child of my assembly, I can right click on them and I can say I want to go to the folder. That'll take me to the folder that that file exists inside of, and I can have a look at it in that exact location. What I've also got the ability to do, as you can see in that right click menu, is I've got the ability to go to the working folder. So that'll take me to my local system, that working folder that we would work in locally, and it'll take me to the exact place of that particular file in my local system. At the moment, I don't have it downloaded. That space is clear now because I use that delete working copies. But if I did have a local working copy of it, it would take me exactly, it would take me to the exact location of that particular file. So that's checking the file in. It then creates the file. We've got the ability to then have another user come in, check the file out, make changes to it as long as they've got access to it, and then check it back in, and it's going to continually add different versions essentially to the file for us. And the way we can do that, we've essentially got two different ways of going about that. We can either do it from inside of Vault directly. Not quite the recommended way of doing it, especially if we are working with Inventor files. If you're working with non-CAD files, then you can easily right-click on any one of these files and say we want to check the file out, or do a get. So checking the file out will ensure that it is read-only for any other user and only editable by you. Doing a get will ensure that you've got the latest version of the file downloaded and on your local machine. So that will ensure that you've got the latest version locally, and you can open that whether, if it's not checked out to you, you've got a read-only version of it. If it's checked out to you, you've got a read-write version. You've got an editable version of the particular file. So there are two separate options. But if we do a checkout, we've got the ability to download at the same time. So yeah, that's if you are doing, if you're working outside of Inventor with non-CAD files, we've got the ability to do that. But since we're working inside of Inventor, I can go into Inventor once more, go over to my Vault tab, and I can go to my Open dialog from inside of Inventor. So you can see we don't have to work inside of Vault. We can work inside of Inventor. We're never leaving the environment we're comfortable in, unless we need to do administration and management of products. But if we're the end user, all we need to worry about is the Inventor interface. And when I open the Open button from inside of Inventor, you can see that the interface is slightly different, but fairly much, very fairly the same, if that makes sense. So if I go over to my folder view over here, you can see we've got the same folder structure that we have inside of Vault. We've got at the top level our dollar folder. We've got my workspace. Inside of my workspace, I've got projects. Inside of projects, I've got Blenheim. Inside of Blenheim, I've got Hinge. If I select Hinge from that folder structure, I can see all of the files that I have inside of there. I can also see a thumbnail of each of the items. I can see when they were checked in, any comments, and so on. If I wanted to, I can right-click on here and choose other columns to show certain properties that I might want to see. So if I go right-click and choose columns, there are a whole lot of other properties I can have a look at if I wanted to. Maybe I wanted to have a look at the designer that's associated to it. Maybe I wanted to have a look at the file size or the file name. Yeah, a lot of properties we can come in and choose and add them into the columns here. I can also, if I wanted to reorder these just to make a bit more sense, and customize this as much as I want to for my own personal use. As soon as I'm happy with that, I can then select one of the files if I wanted to. Say, for example, I want to check out my hinge assembly. I can come into open and it'll just essentially open that. If I hit the little drop down next to that, I've got the ability to open using a checkout. That'll just check out this particular one. I've got to open using checkout all. So it's going to check out all of the files that this particular assembly consumes. Or I've got an open read only. So if you only want to look at the file and do some analysis on the file, measuring or visualizing certain things, we've got the ability to open a read only, and that won't check the file out for us. However, this one I want to check out, and I want to check out all. So I'm going to hit checkout all. And it's going to run through the process. Again, sorry, it's on the wrong screen. Let me just grab it from there. Similar dialogue to what we've had before. You can see now it's coming in and saying, okay, at the moment, it's going to be checking out the hinge assembly, the hinge, and the pin. I can come in, add a comment once more. Let's call this one second check. And hit OK on there. And it's going to add that now as a comment on that version of, pardon me again, on the version of the file. I'm going to say yes to all because I want to update any files that might be out of date. And it's going to then run through and open that file once more for me. So now I've got my assembly again, all nice and open. I've got everything located where I want to. If I wanted to, I could make certain changes to the file, add another part, something. I could go in and do whatever I want to really to this assembly. In fact, we may as well just go in and show the process of placing components from Vault as well during this process. So not only do we have this database that's there managing our data in the background, but we've also got the ability to place existing components from Vault. So if we know that there's a file that's already been created by one of our colleagues, or perhaps even from ourselves years ago, months ago, weeks ago, days ago, we've got the ability to go into our Vault database and grab that particular part from there. So if I go into my place section in my assembly options, in my symbol options, you'll see we've now got a place from Vault option. So if I select place from Vault, this will then again go and open my Vault database in the window that we're used to now. And we can go in and have a look at any file that we want to grab. So let's say, for example, let's go straight into workspaces and grab, let me just see a nice one that we can grab and place in. Let's go Blenheim once more. I think I've got a nice gold block that makes absolutely no sense for why we would place it in this assembly, but let's do it anyway, because we can. I'm going to say I want to open this. And I can now place this part directly inside of my assembly from Vault. I can place as many gold blocks as I want to into this. I could come in and do whatever I want to with this. I can add constraints. I can add joints. I can place these however I want to, rotate them, move them, whatever I want to during this process. And as soon as I'm happy with the changes that I've made, I can once more go over to my Vault tab, again, either in the ribbon or in my workspace over here. And I can now check this file back into Vault. So I can right click on it and check it back in, or I can go into, I prefer the other method of going into my Vault tab if I can find it without my glasses. There we go. And check in the entire assembly once more. So I want to, again, save the file. I'll just say yes, hit OK on there. And it'll take me through that same dialog once more. Hit OK on there. Notice it doesn't have to change any of the existing parts inside here, the ones that exist inside of Vault already, because no real changes have been made to it. I'll just hit yes once more. It'll run through the process of checking those in. And if we go back inside of Vault, we should now see, after a quick refresh, that we've got a relationship now between that hinge assembly and its uses. And you can see my Goldie box is there as a attachment to that. So I've gone in through Vault, or through Inventor rather, grabbed parts from Vault, added them into my assembly, checked it in, and it's now created that relationship to those. Again, if I right-click on this Goldie box over here and say I want to go to folder, this will take me inside of Vault to where the file exists. Or if I just go back once quickly to my assembly, if I select go to working folder, there is no working folder, fine. If I try that one more time quickly in the users, go to working folder. One thing I want to point out quickly here with this one, and go to folder as well. It's just some of the icons will appear next to the parts themselves, and they just differ based on the status essentially of the components themselves. So what you might notice is we've got this little gray circle that's next to my Goldie box part. And that just indicates that I've got a local version of that particular part. And currently it's the latest version, but the file isn't checked out to me, and that's why it's gray. I've got another one down here where it's actually an older version of the file, and that's why it's indicating it with the triangle. But again, it's not currently checked out to me, although I do have a local version of the file. So we've got the little indicator on the side to tell us we've got a local version. So Inventor, or Vault rather, is always looking locally to see if we've got the latest version. We've also got this drawing one over here, which I do have the latest version of. It's saved locally, but it's green because it's checked out to me. So it gives us that indication as to what this local status of our files are as well. If I go back to the hinge over here, you can see that none of these have that icon next to them because none of them I don't have a local version of any of them. If I had to do a right click on them and use the get command, the one I was talking about earlier, where we can get a local copy of the part, you can see I can grab either just the assembly, or if I wanted to, I can go into the include children dropdown and say I want to include all dependents. I don't want to include any parents. And I want to get all files. Actually, I don't want to check out. Don't do that. Don't do that. I want to get all dependents. There we go. So it's going to get the latest version of all of those. I've got a little download indicator over there telling me that I'm going to be downloading all of these files. I've got the little tick box over here to tell me that it's not going to be checking them out. If I wanted to check them out, I can hit the check out files option, and that should change from there. Or I can say I want to check out all files, and it'll change that to all files. And as soon as I'm happy with it, I'm not going to check anything out, but I'm going to get all of the files themselves. Again, we can add a comment at this point if we wanted to. Just hit OK. And you can see the little status icon changes to that we've got a local version of the file. If I remove those locally, whether I delete them or whether I get Inventor to delete them, that little icon then will be removed during that process. And that's essentially the process behind checking files in and out. And then again, when a file is checked out to an individual user, we will be able to see that inside of Vault as well. As another user, it'll have a little gray or a little strike through the name of the file, just indicating that somebody else has the file checked out. It's not accessible to us. I can quickly show you that as well. So if I had to right click on this and just check out the file, you can see it gives me a little tick box or a little tick just to indicate it's checked out to me. If I quickly sign out of here and try remember one of the users, and if I go into that same folder, workspace, projects, Blenheim, hinges, it is currently hidden. Let's go. But we can see that part 63 there is currently checked out to another user. It's currently checked out to the designer. And that's now struck through, and it's got a slightly different shade of gray, just indicating that that file isn't checked out. We could by all means still right click and get it, but we wouldn't be able to check this file out because it's currently checked out to another user. So that's essentially some of the security that's related to that particular one. So if I go back out to my administrator, it's just sign out, sign out, sign out, sign out. Oh God, that's what I'm looking for. So now back in as the administrator, I probably have just shown you that from inside of the administrator as well, wherever that file was. Straight up projects, I think. There you go, part 63. So it's checked out to another user, and we wouldn't be able to see that or access that essentially from there. Last thing I want to show you very quickly is just some of the search capabilities inside of Inventor and Vault rather. So what we've got the ability to do is search through the entire database, and because it's using SQL database in the background on the server, it's very quick with the search capabilities inside of Vault. So we can essentially decide at which level we want to search from. So we can go all the way from the top level at the Project Explorer and search now, for example, for Hinge. If I hit Enter on there, we should see any file that contains the name Hinge in it. So we can see anything that contains Hinge or is related in any way to Hinge, whether it's a child of a file that includes Hinge or anything else. We've also got the ability, if we wanted to go through some advanced options or some, we can add a query builder to this. So using the little 2 arrows on the side over there, I can look for multiple properties, which is essentially what the default search is doing, and look for anything that relates to Hinge. If I wanted to, I can look for only files that contain a certain extension. So if perhaps I'm looking for, let's go for that one more time and say Hinge, but we only want part files. So I can say the extension needs to be IPT. If I then search, it'll only show me part files that are related to Hinge. If I wanted to as well, I could come in and use the search criteria dropdown and say I want to look for anything that has a file name that is either Hinge. This isn't going to work as well, I don't think. If I say file name with Hinge, and I'm just going to remove I'm not looking for a part file specifically, just for any file that contains the name Hinge. And you can see I've got any of them that contain the name Hinge. I can also search by author, bulk width, designer, due date, and I can start adding as many items to the criteria as I want, or properties to the criteria as well. I've also got the ability to come in and add some wildcard searches as well. So if I want something ending with the number 1, I can search through my entire database and it'll show me anything that ends in the number 1. If I add the asterisk to the end, it's going to show me anything that starts with the name 1. I probably don't have anything. I do have a few. So anything that starts with the number 1, I can go 15 because I can see that that's there, and maybe even 150, and search for any part or any file inside of my database that starts with 150, and that's what it'll then show me. I can then again say I want to only look for a part file, so I can go IPT and search that, and it's not showing me that. Go for a file extension IPT. Interesting. Is it caps? No, it was there a few seconds ago. I saw it. My own 2 eyes. I didn't see it. I lied. It was IDW. Apologies, IDW. There we go. We've got the ability to search for each of those. So again, as we go through the different processes, we've got the ability to add those searches in and look for very specific files from inside of Vault. We've also then got the ability, if we wanted to just go in and add these searches as a saved search. So if you do find yourself looking for searches multiple times, the same search, with whatever the criteria may be. We've got the ability to save that, and we can then save it into a search folder on the bottom left over there below all of our items. So let's go, say we're looking for the search name is going to be 150 IDW. Just keep it nice and simple, and I'm going to save it as a folder. Hit OK on there. Fine. 150 IDW. And it's now added it in a search folder over there. So anytime I want to, I can be wherever I want to, and it's going to let me see those files that existed there. So say, for example, we want to use a search for all files that are checked out to a certain user. We've got the ability to use that in there. So we wanted to have a look at all files that are older or newer than a certain age. We've got the ability to add those in there as well. Then we've also then got the ability that functionality goes over to our to Inventor as well. So inside of Inventor, let me just shut this down very quickly. We've got the ability to use those same searches inside of Inventor as well. So inside of the Vault tab, if I go to my Open section, I've got the ability from inside here to look through in my Advanced section, my searches. So I can just do a generic search from inside here. I can look for certain properties that I want to search for and the value of a certain property, or I can go to my saved searches from inside there, and you can see that that same saved search is available to me, and I can just grab that immediately from there. So whether you're doing it as an administrator inside of the Vault program, or whether you're doing it inside of Vault as one of the end users, one of the designers, we've got the ability to create and configure our saved searches and be able to use those going forward. Awesome. So that's pretty much brought us to the end of the demonstration. I hope that's been beneficial to you. Again, as with all of the other ones, if there's any other features that you'd like to take a look at, or you'd want a bit more detail on, or just want to discuss this and look into it a bit further with us, feel free to contact us. Again, we've got a lot of videos on our YouTube channel. I'm assuming that most of you are going to be watching this on the YouTube channel, so have a look around on there. We've gone through the entire Inventor series. I think there's still another 2 more episodes to go. But yeah, any other questions, feel free to contact either myself or anybody here at Man & Machine, and we'll be able to assist you going forward. Other than that, thank you so much for your time today, and I shall see you guys again next time. Bye.